Hi, my name is Kelly, and I'll be reading Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there lived a poor widow in a little cottage with her only son, Jack. They were very poor. Jack had no work, so all they had to live on was the milk given by their cow, Milky White, which they took to the market each morning and sold. Jack was a kind-hearted and quick boy, but he was also giddy and willful. Then one day, Milky White stopped giving milk. After several days of this, Jack's mother said to him, "We must sell Milky White at the market and use the money to start a shop or something." "All right, mother," said Jack. "Today is market day. I'll soon sell Milky White, and then we'll see what we can do with the money. I'll make sure I'll get the best price I can." So Jack took Milky White's rope and set off down the road with her to town. As he walked along, he met a funny-looking old man who stopped and said to him, "Hello, Jack. Where are you off to?" "Good morning," replied Jack, wondering all the while how this strange fellow knew his name. "I'm off to the market to sell our cow." This man stretched out his hand and showed Jack 5 curious beans. They were all sorts of colors and shimmered and shone. "These beans are of great value. I'd be prepared to do a swap with you, your cow for my beans." "You don't say," said Jack. He agreed to the sale and handed over Milky White's rope. Jack headed home again, the 5 beans in his pocket. His mother was surprised to see him home so soon. "Back already, Jack?" she asked. "How much did you sell Milky White for? What, 5 pounds? 10? 15? Surely not 20. "What about these?" said Jack as he stretched out his hands to show her the beans. His mother took them and looked at him. "What!" she exclaimed. "Have you been such a fool as to give away my Milky White for a handful of beans? What shall we do? How could you? As for these beans, out the window they go." Jack's angry mother threw the beans out the window and sent him to bed without any supper. He was very sad and sorry, not just for the missed supper, but for his mother's sake as well. It was several hours before he fell asleep. When Jack woke up the next morning, his room seemed different. Normally bright and sunny, it was strangely dark and shady. He ran to his window and looked out. To his amazement, he saw that the beans had grown in the night. They had formed a beanstalk that climbed up until it vanished into the clouds. Jack ran down to the garden to take a closer look. "Why, those beans have twined together so you could climb it like a ladder," thought Jack. "I wonder where it ends." Jack began to climb the beanstalk. It bore his way easily. He climbed until everything below him, his house, the road, the town, all began to look quite small. He climbed and he climbed and he climbed until he was quite tired. He stopped to rest for a short while, and then he continued on. Finally, Jack reached the top of the beanstalk. He found himself next to a long straight road that ran through some lovely countryside of woods, pastures, and a crystal-clear stream burbling along. In the far distance along the road stood a great castle of stone. Jack set off along the road towards the castle. He walked until he came to the stone castle. Standing on the doorstep was a big, tall woman. She was a giant. "Good morning, ma'am," said Jack politely. "Would you be so kind as to give me some breakfast?" Jack was as hungry as a hunter, as he was sent to bed without his supper. "It's breakfast you want, is it?" said the woman. "It's breakfast you'll be if you don't get along. My man is a giant, and there'll be nothing he likes better than a boy for breakfast. He'll be here soon. Move along or I'll cook you myself." "Oh, please, ma'am, don't cook me," said Jack. "I'd be willing to serve you if you'd be so good to hide me from your husband and give me some breakfast." "There's a good boy," said the giantess, very pleased with the idea of a boy to help her. She took Jack into the kitchen and gave him a hunk of bread and cheese and some milk. As Jack was finishing his breakfast, the whole house started to shake. Jack heard a loud noise in the distance, getting closer. Thump, thump, thump. "It's my husband!" exclaimed the giantess. "Quick, hide in here!" She bundled Jack into the oven and shut the door just as the giant came in. The giant was enormous. He had been out hunting and had 3 calves hanging from his belt. "Cook me a couple of these for my breakfast," he bellowed and flung them on the table. Then the giant paused, sniffed the air, and cried out in a voice like thunder, "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." Then he shouted, "There is a man in the castle. Let me have him for my breakfast." "Nonsense," said the giantess. "You've grown old and silly. It must be the man you had for dinner yesterday. Go and wash up, and I'll have your breakfast ready for you." The giantess left to wash up, and Jack opened the oven door to jump out, but the giantess told him to wait. "He will have a sleep after breakfast, and then you can come out," she said. The giantess cooked 2 of the calves for the giant's breakfast, which he wolfed down hungrily. Then the giant went to a big chest and took out some bags of gold. He sat down and began to count out the money, until eventually his head began to nod, and he started to snore so loudly that the house shook. Jack crept out of the oven. As he went past the giant, he took one of the bags of gold, and then he ran as fast as he could to the beanstalk. He threw down the gold and climbed down after it. When he got home, he showed his mother the bag of gold and said, "See, Mother, wasn't I right to buy those beans? They are magical." Jack and his mother lived off the gold for some time, but at last it ran out. He decided to try his luck at the top of the beanstalk again. Jack climbed and he climbed until he reached the top. When he came to the castle, the giantess was standing again on the doorstep. "Good morning," said Jack. "Could you give me some breakfast?" The giantess looked at him suspiciously, unsure if she knew him. "Go away, boy," she said, "or my husband will eat you for breakfast." "But wait, are you the youngster who came here before? My husband lost a bag of gold that day." "That's strange, ma'am," said Jack. "I dare say I could tell you something about that, but I'm so hungry that I couldn't speak until I've had some breakfast." The giantess was curious, so she took Jack in and gave him some breakfast. As he was finishing, Jack heard a loud thumping in the distance, and the house began to shake. "Quick, into the oven!" exclaimed the giantess, and Jack scrambled in. The giant bellowed, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." The giantess scolded him, and the giant had breakfast. Then he said, "Wife, bring me my hens that lay the gold eggs." The giantess brought in the hen, and the giant said, "Lay." The hen laid an egg made entirely of gold. After a while, the giant's head began to nod, and he started to snore so loudly that the house shook. Jack crept out of the oven, grabbed hold of the hen, and ran for all he was worth. As he ran, the hen cackled, and Jack heard the giant wake up and call out, "Wife, wife, what have you done with the hen?" That was all Jack heard before he rushed down the beanstalk. When he got home, he showed his mother the hen and said, "Lay" to it. It laid a golden egg every time he told it to. Still, Jack was not content and decided to try his luck up the beanstalk again. He climbed and he climbed until he reached the top, but this time he did not walk along the road to the house. Jack crept along and he hid behind a bush until he saw the giantess come out to the well. Then he slipped into the house and climbed into a large copper boiler. He hadn't been there long before he heard a loud thumping noise, and the giant and his wife came into the kitchen. The giant sniffed and bellowed, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Do you?" asked the giantess. "If it's that little rogue who stole your gold and your hen, he's bound to be in the oven." Luckily, Jack had not hidden there, and the giantess said, "Well, there you go again with your fee, fi, fo, fum. It must be that man we ate last night that you can smell." The giant sat down to breakfast, but throughout the meal he kept muttering, "I could swear," to himself, and he would get up and look in the larder and the cupboards. Luckily, he did not think of the copper boiler. After breakfast, the giant said, "Wife, bring me my golden harp." The giantess put the harp on the table in front of him, and the giant said, "Sing." At once the golden harp began to sing most beautifully. It sang until the giant's head began to nod, and he started to snore so loudly that the house shook. Then Jack quietly lifted the lid of the boiler and climbed out. He crept up to the table and grabbed hold of the golden harp and dashed to the door. But the magic harp cried out, "Master, master," in a loud voice, and the giant woke up to see Jack running out the door. Jack ran as fast as he could, but the giant ran faster. He had nearly caught Jack when they reached the beanstalk, and Jack dodged and then disappeared down into the ground. The giant looked down and saw Jack climbing down for dear life. For a minute, the giant hesitated, and then he swung himself down on the beanstalk. It swayed and shook with the giant's weight as he made his way down. Jack climbed faster and faster until he was nearly home. Then he called out, "Mother, mother, bring the axe, bring the axe." Jack's mother came rushing out with the axe in her hand, but stopped in fright when she saw the giant making his way down the beanstalk. Jack jumped down and grabbed the axe and chopped at the mighty beanstalk until it was cut in two. The beanstalk began to topple and fall, and the terrible giant fell down with it, and lay still, never to eat anyone again. By selling the golden eggs and showing the golden harp, Jack and his mother became very rich. Jack married a great princess, and they all lived happily ever after, but they never knew what became of the funny-looking old man who sold Jack the beans. And that's the end.